I'm Doug from Dynamic Computing, and welcome to episode 183 of 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast. This week, I'm reviewing the A600GS computer from AmigaKit, that cute little computer that emulates an Amiga. And to be honest, I've had it for like 5 months now, and I was considering doing a review when I first received it, but oh boy, I am glad I did not do a review then, because it would have not been good. I'm so glad I waited, and I'll explain that in a bit. Now, for the unwashed and uneducated plebeians out there, the A600GS is a small black computer with an Orange Pi, not a Raspberry Pi, an Orange Pi and a custom board inside that can emulate an Amiga and play almost any game that you toss at it and more. Come on over by my Amiga 1200 and let's check out the A600GS. Here's the little beauty right here. Let's start by taking a look at the hardware supplied. The computer itself is rather attractive. It's in this mini PC form factor that seems to be so popular nowadays. Everyone's doing it. There are some trolls online that complain that it does not look like an Amiga, but I cannot imagine that if AmigaKit decided to put it in a wedge case with a full keyboard, they'd be able to sell it for 150 bucks. Now look at the front here. What have we got here? Two actual 9-pin joystick ports that are actually fully functional. You can use them for a mouse or you can use them for a joystick, which is pretty cool. Now let's look at the back. We've got some nice ports here. Starting from the left, there's a total of 3 USB ports. There's 2 here and 1 right here. You're going to want to use those for the joystick and the mouse and the keyboard and the flash drive and the floppy drive. And you realize you soon run out completely of the USB ports. You'll run out real quick. But luckily, you can use a pretty bog standard USB hub. Get a powered one if you can, and that will work fine to add on ports. Now here we have a nice little Ethernet port, fully functional. You won't really need that much because this also has Wi-Fi, which works exceptionally well, so you'll probably hook it up to your network via Wi-Fi. Over here, we've got a USB-C port that's used for power. Now, it does not come with a power adapter, just like everything else on the planet now. So you're going to want one that's at least 2 or 3 amps. Don't use one little wimpy little 1 amp one or half amp. That's not going to work. You need a 2 or 3 amp one to work on this. The quick charger ones work pretty good. Now, I have not tested hooking up a powered USB hub to this, one that supplies actual power, to see if that USB port can actually be used for other devices. I have no idea, but maybe it can. Here you have a micro HDMI connector, and thankfully it comes with a cable because these are a pain to find, but a nice little micro HDMI connector. And then over here we have a 3.5 millimeter audio jack. In addition to pumping out audio, stereo audio through the jack here, the HDMI, you can also send it out 3.5 inch or 3.5 millimeter jack. Works really good. Next, we're going to open her up and see what she looks like bar naked in here. There's usually a couple little screws that you have to remove, little plastic feet to get to the screws. I've already taken mine apart. Now you'll see inside here, you have an Orange Pi. Now this is a cousin to the Raspberry Pi, just made by a different company with a few other features, but it's about equivalent to a Raspberry Pi. That's what supplies that HDMI, networking, audio, video, everything like that. But here, look what's underneath here. We have a custom board. It says good stuff, and it's made by our pal Alex at Rabbit Hole Computing. Now he's the one who does all the great things like the SCSI to SD and the Zulu SCSI, and he's also just a really super nice guy. He's a buddy of mine. So you know this is a good quality board if Alex had his hands in it. Now over here you've got a 13-pin set of connectors where it's stealing the audio from. A couple of these pins are audio pins, and you have another set of 26 pins here that's an expansion port. Currently not used for anything, but it passes most of the signals through from the Orange Pi, so this could be used for future expansions, you know, time travel devices, portals to other dimensions, that kind of thing. You can add on here in the future. I'm certain of it. Now she boots from a 64 gig, just a little micro SD card in here. Everybody's got 8,000 of these, and it ships with one. It ships with a 64 gig. You can easily get 128 gig or 256 gig. They'll work fine. You're just going to need to image it with the boot software for this, and hopefully you'll be able to move your stuff over if you expand it in the future. I'll probably do a show on that later. But 64 gigs so far has been pretty good for me. Now, is the build quality of this the same as like a Lenovo or a Dell, one of the little mini PCs? Of course not. But those are also $500, not $150, and they're not Amigas, so they're not nearly as cool. Now, of course, any USB mouse and keyboard will work with it. You don't have to use it with one. You can use a joypad to do everything, but you don't want to. I happen to be using one of the Simulant System Amiga keyboards. These things are a flippin' beauty. I'll put a link in the up here with my video review of one of these. And I'm also using Lucas's Amiga Tank Mouse recreation. This is the wireless tank mouse. And so it gives it kind of a cool Amiga feel using actual, Amiga-like devices. Let's go ahead and hook it back up and take a look at the actual system running. Now on boot up, there's this nice splash screen that you see right over here. Quite attractive. And you can hit any button on the keyboard or the joypad to get past the splash screen. And it takes you to the main menu, the main interface of the A600GS. Now yours will not look exactly like mine when you get it, because you may not have all of the games loaded, and you may not have a custom Amiga 1200 install on here like I have. Here's what you want to do when you first get started. The very first thing is to go over to the left-hand menu here, again using your mouse or using the joypad, and go over to Network. Go to your network setting, and I'm already connected to Potato Wi-Fi, but you're going to click New Wi-Fi Connection, and it is going to determine what your Wi-Fi is. It'll show a list of them, and then you can put in your Wi-Fi password on this screen. Now mine's already set up, so I don't need to do it again. But if I did, I could just go through these steps and connect to your new Wi-Fi. Now the next most important thing, once you're connected to your Wi-Fi or your regular Ethernet, is to go up here to your AmiSphere profile. And what you want to do, if you already have an AmiSphere profile, you can log in, like mine is Denmark, and doesn't know what country I live in. That's okay. But if you need to create a new AmiSphere account, you go over here to Create Account, create a new account with AmiSphere, and then you're able to register your A600GS, and you're also able to get all of your updates, because you've got to get your updates. Once you register and you've got a profile online, it will tell you over here if your firmware is up to date, and if not, you can click Check Update. It'll look for new firmware, and just let it do its latest update. It's critical that you get the latest updates on here, because the new features from the past couple of weeks are fantastic. Now also back over here, once you create your account, if you go to Downloads, once you create your account, you're going to see all of the new games and programs that they have available for the A600GS. These were not available when it first shipped, and they probably won't already be on your system. But you can go and look at any of these cool games and click Install. It'll download them right to your A600GS. Now notice mine down here says Personal Paint Classic 68K Image Effects Studio. That's because I've had an AmiSphere account for years, and I've bought these products in the past, and they literally link up with AmiSphere and let you download software you already own, which is really cool. Now, once you've downloaded the latest firmware, once you've put your latest games on here, you can go back and configure some of the settings on here. So what we want to do is go to Audio first. Now, by default, it's going to be pumping the stereo audio out through the HDMI port, which is great because you probably have it hooked up to your television. But if you want to use that rear 3.5 millimeter jack like I do to hook it up to, I've got it hooked up to my mixer, you go here and you tell it, use the rear 3.5 millimeter jack. You can control some of the volume on here. Works great. I go down here to Display, It's going to give you options for what display mode to use. Just use 1920 by 1080 if you can. Full HD, it looks the best. I've tried some of these other resolutions and everything looks too big and bulky and they don't look good. Use that if you can. Here's a cool one, controllers. See how it says USB gamepad? That's fine. You can add standard 9-pin joysticks right to those little controllers right up front. Literally plug it right in, tap the button 2 times, it registers as either joystick 1 or joystick 2, depending on how many you have plugged in, and allows you to use real 9-pin joysticks with your A600GS. That is a fantastic feature right there, because not everyone allows that. Over here under language and keyboard, you don't have to mess with anything in here. You just change it to your preferred language. I mean, English US is really the only thing anybody ever needs to do because America. But most of the other stuff you don't need to mess with on here. Network, we've already talked about network. We're connected to it. Bluetooth, this one's fun. Okay, so this has Bluetooth built into it. You're able to link it up with Bluetooth speakers, which is actually kind of cool. That's actually a neat feature because, you know, you got a little Bluetooth speaker, send your A600GS audio straight to that. You're using a nice sound bar in front of your TV, send it directly to the sound bar. It's actually kind of cool. Now, I tried to sync up a Bluetooth mouse to this, thinking I could use a Bluetooth mouse. Didn't seem to work. There's no real reason why it shouldn't. I'm sure that they can just add that in a future firmware update. I'll talk to the guys about it. Now see how the screen, the little menu blinks on and off there as I move the mouse and it's just slightly out of place? You're going to run into that a lot. We'll talk to a little bit about that at the end of the video. Backup and restore. This is important. First of all, you can restore it to factory defaults by clicking here, and it will actually restore the A600GS to its defaults if you screw things up, and you could. You can also back up your own stuff on here. Like if I had my Amiga 1200 highlighted on the main screen, and you know what, let's just show you by example. Games and applications. We've got my 1200 there. Now we go to backup and restore. Backup currently selected title. Boom. Create backup archive. You plug an external hard drive in here. You plug a 128 gig flash drive in here. You take the creations that you've created, the cool things that you've put all these hours into, and just back them up. It is so good because it is possible to corrupt these things and lose all your hard work. Just back them up periodically. Helpful. Then, of course, shut down, restart, that kind of thing. This, critical, right here, manage ROM files. By default, this thing ships with the Eros ROM. Eros is an alternative to Amiga OS. Let's talk about that a little bit. I'll be honest, I am not an Eros guy, nor have I ever been an Eros guy. I don't care one fig Newton about it, to be perfectly honest. Some people like it. It's cool. It's somewhat compatible with Amiga OS ROMs. A little bit, maybe slightly, but not totally. So what you want to do, you want to grab your favorite flash drive. You want to go back over to your WinUAE or FSUAE, whatever you're using. Grab the following ROMs, your Workbench 1.3 ROMs, Workbench 3.1, and any of your new ROMs like Amiga OS 3.2.2. Grab those ROMs, put them on the flash drive. You come back over here with the flash drive plugged in here, import ROM, browse to your flash drive, pull those ROMs right in. You now have those ROMs on your A600GS because the Eros ROM ain't going to cut it for 90% of what we're going to do. Here we're talking about one of the reasons I didn't do this review a couple of months ago. When this first came out and up until about a month and a half ago, you could not choose what ROM you're using for any particular application. You could put a Kickstart 1.3. You could put a Kickstart 3.1. That's it. That's all it recognized. And when you created a new virtual computer, it would pick whatever ROM it felt like it needed. It just said, oh, I think I'll use a Kickstart 1.3. I think I'll use Kickstart 3.1. I think I'll use Eros. You couldn't even choose it. And it was almost useless when I was trying to create like my Amiga 1200 profile, because I could not use my 3.2.2 ROM. Wouldn't let me use it. Didn't care it was there. Now with the later firmware updates, you can choose whatever ROM you want. It makes things 1,000 times better. But what you want to do is you want to add things to your A600GS. You don't want just the inbuilt games, as good as 3 of them might be. Did I say that out loud? I meant to just think that. You don't want to just use your inbuilt games. You want to add your own stuff to it. And when this thing first came out 6 months ago, well, how do I say this? The stuff that was built in sucked. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. But after a while, they came out with, Deluxe Galaga they put on here, Biplanes, what else? Furball, what else we got here? The Santatron 2024 Nivrig's game, that's awesome. Tracer, Super Skid Marks, Tanks. So they finally got some good games on here. Some of these are ones that I put on myself. So let's talk about a little bit about what's actually on here. You'll see this thing called AmiBench with this beautiful workbench background. Let's go ahead and launch that. First of all, you'll see it's absolutely beautiful. It is an absolutely beautiful interface, full screen here. You can go into the equivalent of the workbench here, access things, work drive, access your different programs in your programs drive, games, office, applications. There's Final Writer. So what can I say about AmiBench? AmiBench is pretty incompatible with absolutely everything I tried to load on it. Literally everything. I mean, I tried to load image effects by the same company that did this on here, and it wouldn't install. The installer was broken. And yeah, now it comes with Eros compatible versions and ARM compatible versions of Final Writer, Octamed, Dopus, Personal Paint, and Yam, yet another mailer. And that's fantastic. We've got new versions of these packages. Yay, fantastic. Problem is they're completely 100% incompatible with regular Amigas. So we've got this new version of Final Writer 7.2. It's absolutely beautiful. And let's open it up here. Absolutely wonderful. It's got cool new features like the ability to export as PDF. Totally and completely incompatible with your regular Amiga. So if I want to use Final Writer on my Amiga 1200 installation on here, I have to use Final Writer 97. This just won't work. And that's fine, because some people may really enjoy using Final Writer on here. Lots of people have been waited with absolutely bated breath for the new version of Octamed. For years, they've owned the Octamed license, and we haven't had a new version of Octamed. So this new version of Octamed comes out, only works on the A600GS and the new A1200GS that they have. Not compatible with regular 68K Amigas. Okay, so that means that the 47.5 people who actually use Eros and want to use the A600GS with AmiBench will have this cool new software, where the other thousands and thousands and thousands of us who've been wanting new software on our actual 68K Amigas can't use it. Not the best decision. I absolutely see where they're going with it. They want to customize it for their new product. And it does work faster with the ARM processor. I don't doubt that a bit. But this thing is so unbelievably fast as it is when I run it in A1200 mode. All my Final Writer 97 works fine. It works beautifully fast. Just get as good 68K versions too. Now here's another one that's actually a decent program, Yam, yet another mailer. They stopped production on this several years ago, like 2016. They've recently picked up the license for it, and they're updating it, which is great and absolutely fantastic. But Yam 100% only works with POP3 email. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think all of us stopped using POP3 email in around 1927. All right, even the services that still allow you to use POP3 and like Gmail and Outlook, they do. All of it, you have to be authorized using the OAuth authentication, which means when you log into your POP3 email and you set it up, it has to pop up a web window and you have to log in there, and it sends a special token back to your program. Usernames and passwords do not work with, I would guess, 95 to 97% of the email that's out there now. Literally won't work with YAM. So fantastic that they're updating it. I love it that they're updating it. It's not going to work for anybody at all. Nobody's going to be able to use it. It probably would have made a little bit more sense to instead update Simple Mail, because Simple Mail is a great program on the Amiga, and it actually supports POP3 and IMAP. And at least IMAP is not, completely deprecated like POP3 is. It's still in use. It still requires OAuth for most people, and I can't use Simple Mail for any of my email program or email accounts. But it would give us, instead of 98% of email being completely useless, it would be more like 92% is completely useless. What are you going to do? Now, I absolutely know I sound like a negative Nancy here about the applications that they've worked so hard on for AmiBench. I know it sounds terrible. And I kind of am being a negative Nancy. If the new Final Writer worked on 68K Amigas, if the new Personal Paint worked on 68K Amigas, the new Octamed worked on 68K Amigas, they would have my money in a New York minute. That would be fantastic. And there's a big audience who's clamoring for that. As it is, I don't use AmiBench on here. I don't use the individual apps on here because they're not compatible with what I need to do. I probably won't use them much at all. I spend all my time using my custom workbench install, which we'll look at in a minute. Now, to be perfectly honest, I feel exactly the same way about MorphOS, Caffeine, and even the incredibly awesome Pymiga, all right? They're customized so much that, it's just kind of incompatible, and, you got to have this and this and this. It's just not my thing. They're awesome. They're completely cool. Just not my thing personally. Now that I'm done whining and complaining like a little girl about the custom software that they worked so hard on, let's talk about what you really want to do on your A600GS, which is play games. Now, you'll notice I've put some nice ones on here. I've put on Miss Pac-Man, which came out a couple of years ago, River Raid Reloaded, Xevious, Vegetables from Mike Richmond, the new Yoomp that's out right now. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and launch Yoomp. Let me show you how I set it up. So, first of all, I had Yoomp as an ADF file on my little flash drive. Click on Add. In this case, we'll just look at what I've already done here. Give it a title, Yoomp. Category Game. Protected from deletion, choose protected. That just means you can't delete it without removing that check mark. Then you tell it what kind of Amiga you're working on. In this case, I've got Amiga 1200 set up. I chose my Kickstart ROM file, customized the memory setup, and I just maxed out the memory, 2 megs of chip, 8 megs of fast. I'm not using any special chipsets, and that's it. I also chose turbo speed for floppy drives. And then I should just be able to click start, and it will start up this cool new Yoomp game. Let's take a look. Fast Amiga, full quality, absolutely. It's the only way to go. And we'll go ahead and start the game. And the music on here is quite good. It's surprisingly not that different from the 8-bit Amiga or 8-bit Atari version. They intentionally made the graphics on here fairly rudimentary to make it more resemble the 8-bit version. And I personally wish they hadn't done that. They need to take advantage of what the Amiga can truly do and show beautiful Amiga screens. But it's still an absolutely fun game that you need to try. Hit F12 to exit out of any game that you're in right now. Now you'll notice here you have an option, save screenshot to thumb. This is actually really cool right here. So when I hit enter over save screenshot to thumb, all right, what that's going to do is create a thumbnail. You look on my Yoump screen right now, that screen I was just on now is now my thumbnail for the Yoump game, which is actually pretty cool. Let's look at adding a new game on here. Oh, look, we've got Roadcraft on here. Now, one of the easiest ways to do it, we've all got GoTech drives. Most of us have GoTech drives. Take your little GoTech flash drive, like my little guy right here. It's got a ton of games on it. I'm going to go ahead and plug it into the A600GS. All right, she's plugged in. Now, we go to this button here that says Add. What do we want to add? Well, we could do ADF files, which is what we're going to do right now. But look what else we can import. CD-ROM images in ISO format, CD32 format. Now, that sounds really cool. You can just put your CD32 games in there and import those. Unfortunately, I have not found a single one that actually works. I've tried like 3 or 4. None of them work. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. WHD boot archive. These are the relatively new, couple-year-old WHD load archives in LHA format that you can get. Some distributors are distributing those now, and you can use that, which is kind of cool. Hard disk drive, which literally lets you import an HDF file. We'll talk more about that later. Floppy drawbridge or create custom system. All we're worried about right now is the ADF file. Import ADF. There's my 2 flash drives I have plugged in. We're going to choose my Kingston. And we're going to go down here to Games. And we're going to choose a cool game. Let's do Pac-Man. We all know and love Pac-Man. Choose the game, import file. It copies it right over to the onboard memory on here. Now we can edit the name here. We can call it Pac-Man. You can fill this out if you want to. We won't do a thumbnail quite yet. What do we want to emulate? Let's do an Amiga 1200 ROM file. Let's do Kickstart 3.1. That's a good stable one. We don't really need to do just-in-time emulation. Customize the memory map, 2 megs of chip by default. Why not just tell it to run with 8 megs of RAM? Why not? Use faster chipset. Nah, we don't have to. Enable networking. We don't have to. Never hurts to use turbo speed floppy drives. I don't always find where it works, but we can do it. Then literally save changes. This is ready to play. We click start and we let the ADF launch. Let's see what happens. And now we have Pac-Man running on our machine here. Now it took, 30, 40 seconds to load, just like an Amiga game normally would, but it's not too bad. The enable the fast floppy didn't seem to do anything in this case that I noticed. We can start the game, and this is a great rendition of Pac-Man right here. I don't play this nearly as much as I play Ms. Pac-Man, but it's still fun to give it a good go now and again. Now, playing Pac-Man or any Pac-Man game on a D-pad, that's a big thumbs down to me, but that's what I'm doing. Normally I'd be at 1,000,000 points now, but because I have to play with the D-pad, I'm only at 1,000. And I'm also a blatant liar. But you see, that's as easy as it is to add in a game on here. It's really nice. Let's hit F12, and the point where I'm probably about to die right there. Let's go ahead and save screenshot to thumb. And then we're going to quit the game. And now Pac-Man, you'll see on the screen, has the actual screen I was just on as the default screen for Pac-Man. Anytime I run it, click start, I'm golden. Literally, the whole thing takes like 30 seconds to add an ADF file in here. It's so super easy. Let's talk about if we want to add a game that has multiple floppies on it. Real easy to do. We just find the game down here, and this one's got 6 floppies. Look at that. We've selected all 6 of them. I've just held down the control key like you would normally do, and we can tell it what machine it wants to emulate. We'll say an Amiga 1200, and we will put some extra memory in here. Let me just say 8 megs of memory. Save changes. And now we'll start up the game and we'll show you how to swap floppy disks. Okay, so here it's already asking for disk 1 after we booted the game. Just hit F12, choose disk changer, and there's all 6 disks that we've put on here. Disk 1, disk 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is probably the disk it's looking for here. We'll try that out. And then, of course, back to disk 0. Okay, we'll go disk changer, back to disk, first disk, and what a great game to choose to test this out. One that asks you to jump between the floppies every 13 seconds. That's great. I love my life. So now you've seen how straightforward it is to add ADF files with a multiple disks even. No problem at all. You can build up your collection pretty darn quickly there. Now, this system defaults to PAL for everything. Everything I've hooked on here has been PAL so far. When I put an NTSC program on here, it also seems to work just fine, but it would be kind of cool if we had a PAL or NTSC toggle to make sure that it's working at the proper frequency. Maybe that's something they can add in the future. And of course, when you're adding games, make sure you put the Kickstart ROMs in here, the 1.3 and at least 3.1, because half of these things aren't going to work with the Aeros ROM. Now, if you just used the A600GS just for this purpose, for adding game upon game upon game, and had a cool gaming system, this would be worth the price of admission right here, in my humble opinion. I think it's totally worth it. But it can do so much more, and let's take a look at that. But first, let's talk about a couple of little caveats that I found with the games. I found a couple of games that just don't work with the built-in or the included gamepad. This little guy right here works fine for most things, and it's a fine quality one. But like games like Star Control, it just goes wacky. It does not read the USB joystick at all. You plug in a real joystick, works fine, no big deal. Now, a big problem I found was with some really high-end programs like Reshoot R, and I've done a video on that. You'll see a link in the description up here. That's a nice high-end game, but it runs on an unexpanded Amiga 1200 with 2 megs of chip RAM. That's its minimum requirements, okay? I run Reshoot R on here, and I've got it cranked up to a 68040 using just-in-time emulation and a gig of RAM, and the thing runs like a dog. Audio is laggy, gameplay is laggy. It's weird, and I don't know why a few games just choke like that. I think they're maybe looking for real hardware. Let's take a quick look right over here. So just for an example here, this is Reshoot R, which is one of the most fantastic games you're ever going to find on the Amiga. The guys that did it are just incredible. I did a review on it a while back. I'll link to it, hopefully up there somewhere. But you can already hear the audio just isn't right. And this is with the A600GS emulating a 68040 running at 25 megahertz. When I actually have it set at just-in-time and maximum speed, it's a little better, but it's not right. The audio just does not sync. And look at this horrible, horrible gameplay. This just isn't right. Where most games that I play on here, full speed. I mean, if you've played this game before, you know just how wrong this is right now. And I've tried a multitude of settings and different RAM settings and CPU settings, and it does not like it for some reason. It's not seeing, maybe the original game hits the hardware in such a way that it can't hit it here. But I've played this on WinUAE, perfectly fine. Play this on my Raspberry Pi, perfectly fine. Play it on a 68040 machine, perfectly fine. 68030 machine, perfectly fine. Everything's synchronized. So there's a couple little issues, but I'm sure they'll get ironed out. Yeah, so as you can see, that wasn't normal. That's not normal at all. When I was running that at a 68040 at 25 megahertz, the thing absolutely choked. I don't know. We'll figure it out though. So we've talked about games, and you're going to use this a lot for games. I use it a lot for games. But what if you want to put a real installation of Amiga OS on here, like Amiga OS 3.2.2? Absolutely no problem at all today with the latest firmware to do that. Talk to me about it 3 or 4 months ago, I'd tell you it's a pain in the butt. You can barely get it functional. But now with all the updates they've done, works fantastic. Now, it works very similar to how you add a floppy in here. Just click the add button and you're going to get some options and some questions. I clicked the wrong button. Like here, custom full system, create custom system. Cool. So we're going to create a custom system. We're going to give it a name. We'll call it A1200-2. And you're going to tell it what kind of machine it is. It's an A1200. It's going to use the A1200 47.111 ROM. CPU is going to be 68040. CPU speed, maximum speed, just in time, emulation. Memory, let's give it 8 megs of fast RAM, even though we're also going to add even more RAM to it. We're going to enable networking, use real-time graphics card. You don't have to. You can have it just AGA. Use Zorro 3 memory. That's going to let you use up to a gig of RAM on here as memory. This new option here is really important. I'm going to talk about this in a minute. And you can also add other drives on here. Include USB drives. Absolutely, you want to do that. Then you tell it you want to add your hard disk files. Click on Add Hard Disk Files. We'll browse to where our hard disk files are that I will talk about in a moment. There it is, A1200 HDF. And if we click Add Hard Drive File, it now adds whatever hard drive file I've already created and allows you to boot it in A600GS. Okay, that means if you create an HDF file with Workbench 1.3, fantastic. Have it on here as a profile. Workbench 2.04, there you go, no problem. Workbench 3.1, great. Workbench 3.2.2, doubly great. You can use whatever kind of installation you want and set it up custom on here and even share folders. Okay, for example, I might have a work folder that has, or a work partition that has all of my programs on it. I can use that on an Amiga 1200 emulation. I can use that on an Amiga 4000. I can use it on an Amiga 500 and have the same basic work hard drive. Just have the booting hard drive as a different operating system. You can create a 4 gig data partition that just stores files on it, pictures, documents, demos, games, things like that. Share that amongst all your different profiles you create. It's really cool. So how do you do this? Well, in theory, you could create a profile like this, put just a bare naked HDF file on here, and install it off of floppy. You can literally do that. You know, like on my GoTech floppy, I've got all the Amiga OS 3.22 floppies as ADF files. Just one at a time install them. It works fine. Or because this does not allow you to create HDF files automatically. You have to create them someplace else. You may as well just use WinUAE or AmiBerry on another platform and create a full installation there, or use an existing one you already have. You can take a compact flash card from your real Amiga 1200, bring it over to your PC, launch WinUAE, and tell it, make me an HDF file out of this compact flash card. Sure, happy to do it. That brings me to a strange issue that I have with this, though. When I first started creating the custom installations, I was trying to use 16 gig installation files because that's usually how big my compact flash cards are. I'd copy over my Amiga 1200 and create a 16 gig hard disk file, put it on my flash drive. The A600GS sees it fine. It says, oh yeah, I got it. You go tell it to use that, locks up the A600GS every single time. And in December, at one point in time, I tried to do it, and it totally bricked my A600GS. I had to re-image the SD card to get it to work again. Totally corrupted the SD card. But if I use a 4 gig HDF file, like a dream, like instantly it works, everything's fine. So there must be a limitation somewhere in here where it really only wants to use 4 gig HDF files. AmiBerry doesn't have that limitation as far as I know. And this shouldn't either, but it does. So I use 4 gig files. So how did I do this then? I've got an Amiga 1200, 16 gig compact flash card. I want to use that boot file and that work partition on my A600GS. No problem. You launch WinUAE on your PC. You tell it to boot off of that 16 gig compact flash card. Okay? Boom, your Amiga 1200 comes up. You create 2 or 3 new 4 gigabyte HDF files, again, using WinUAE. It has all the capability built right in. You mount those on the Amiga 1200 virtual machine you've got running. Mount those 3 partitions, format them, make one bootable, and you copy everything over to the 4 gig partitions. You copy over your workbench. You copy over your work. You copy over your data onto 3 separate partitions, each of them 4 gigs. You're done. It works. You take those on a flash drive, put them in your A600GS, say, hey, look, here's Workbench 3.22 on a 4 gig partition. Happy day. It's amazing. Let's take a look at how I've got mine configured here. So we've got the A1200 ROM here. We're going to crank this up to maximum speed, just-in-time compression. Now, using RTG graphics card, and you want to limit Zorro 3 memory space to 1 gig, and this is important. And this is actually printed out because this should be limit Zorro 3 memory space to 768 megabytes, because retargetable graphics on AmiBerry don't work with 1 gig of RAM. It overwrites the space that AmiBerry sets aside for graphics cards, the virtual graphics cards, and you can't use retargetable graphics. It took me like 3 days to figure it out, what was going on. I finally found one reference to it on amiga.org that somebody said, oh yeah, it's incompatible with 1 gig. Put it back down to 8 megs of fast memory. Retargetable graphics is fine, but I don't want to use an RTG system with 8 megs of RAM. So, talked to Matthew, and they patched it so you could tell it to only use 768 megabytes of RAM. Retargetable graphics works fine, which I'll show you in a minute. You can see it sees both of my USB flash drives here. It sees my 2 hard disk files. No problem at all. Let's boot it up. And looky here. You've got yourself a beautiful workbench with 813 megabytes because I've got the limiter turned on, and I've got like 10 megabytes of 24-bit fast RAM enabled. And you've got yourself a fully working workbench right here that came right off of my other system. And I've got my work drive here. Let's see how fast this little guy is. Let's go into our pal sysinfo, which is 100% accurate all the time. Run a speed test. There it is, 229,104 dry stones. Not too bad. Pretty quick. Memory, 768 megs of 32-bit fast RAM, 8 megs of 24-bit, 1 meg of slow RAM, 2 megs of chip RAM. Pretty cool, huh? Let's see if we can do drive speed without it crashing. Sometimes it crashes. 23 megabytes per second. I've tested that with another utility, my disk speed utility. That's pretty darn accurate. I was getting between 24 and 25 megabytes per second, which is pretty good for an Amiga. Now, this works absolutely fantastic as an AGA machine right here. Okay, you have no problems at all with that. Everything works beautifully. Here's, let's launch dpaint. My name is Ian Coggins, by the way. You want to launch dpaint in 1280 by 512 in ham6? Sure, it doesn't care. Just launches right up. Beautiful. You want to do stuff with Art Department Professional with almost a gig of RAM with 768 gigs of RAM. You can load some huge JPEG files in here. Absolutely huge. Music playback works absolutely fine. For example, let's go ahead and launch our good friend Hippo Player, and we're gonna crank up a tune here. And Third Liberation, this is a fantastic mod file, and it plays absolutely perfectly, no loss of audio quality. I've tested this against my regular Amiga 1200. Sounds absolutely perfect, absolutely beautiful. Now, how can we use the awesome retargetable graphics capabilities that are on here? Super easy. Download Picasso 96. Now, definitely buy it from Jens, from individual computers if you can. It's worth it. It's like 10 bucks, and it's got some new features on it, okay? But if you're cheap, you can use the free version that is available on AmiNet, the free Picasso 96. Once you put it in here and you go to install it, we're going to pretend we're going to install it here. What you want to do is go through here, tell it to load all the drivers, and you want to tell it to use an actual video card. We're going to tell it the Picasso 4, for example. You would then go ahead and proceed and install Picasso 96, pretending you have a Picasso 4 video card in here, okay? Now we're going to get out of here because we've already done this. Next, what you want to do, once you've installed your retargetable graphics Picasso 96, we go back to our workbench, we go to devs. Now you would have in here something that says Picasso 4 right here. Mine says A600GS because I've already done this. The one that says Picasso 4, literally rename it. Just right click, rename, call it A600GS. Fantastic. Now you go into the information on here, icon, board type, it'll say board type equals Picasso 4. Change it to board type equals A600GS because this creates a virtual A600GS driver. You won't find the actual driver anywhere on disk. You can't download it. It's virtualized, and it just exists in memory every time you boot it up. And you tell it use A600GS, click save, reboot. Then next time you start up your machine, you can go into screen mode, and suddenly you have all of these other absolutely awesome display resolutions. Like my favorite is 1280 by 720, 32-bit color. Let's see if I can do this. I'll probably have to close down my clock. And close down workbench dock. As soon as it reboots, you're in 1280 by 720 in full 32-bit color. Now watch the fun stuff we can do here. Go to the workbench pattern. And I put mine in my storage folder. Stone. There it is. Now I've got a cool 32-bit color background on here. And you've got this absolutely gorgeous retargetable graphics. All right. Now here's the cool thing. While we're in using retargetable graphics, here's my work drive. There it is. You can launch any of these programs. Let's go to graphics. Let's launch DPaint 5 again. All right. So DPaint 5 never has worked very well with retargetable graphics. It only sort of works. Well, let's say you want to open up an NTSC 320 by 200 ham screen. Okay. No problem. You don't have to do a switch. You don't have to change monitor connections. It just comes up with the darn screen immediately, which is fantastic. And these are totally non-interlaced screens. So for example, we're going to do 320 by 480 or by 400. We're now in interlace mode. It is absolutely rock solid. No de-interlacer required. The screen still allows you to see what's running behind it. So if we had multiple AGA or ECS screens running, you see everything. So it really makes retargetable graphics really practical because you can switch between AGA, ECS, and retargetable graphics without switching anything. It just opens up the proper screen, which is fantastic. We know that our A600GS is networked because we were on Wi-Fi, no problem at all. That also means that your custom implementations here are completely and totally networked, which is absolutely cool. Why did my work drive move again? Did anyone see why that moved again? Okay, so let's go to internet here. Let's go to eyebrows and launch it up here. Opens up on my workbench, www.amiga.org. Just works. Just works. You don't even have to have Roadshow installed or anything like that because it uses a BSD socket library, a virtualized version, and just networks your Amiga. Fantastic. Now, that also gives us some other capabilities here. Let's go ahead and move you out of the way. Let's say we want to access my PC that's sitting 8 inches to my right over here. I have the SMB protocol loaded on here. I've gone over that in a previous video. I'll try and link it up there. But I can go ahead and take a look at my flipping computer that's sitting right next to me here. This is my actual PC. I have full network access to my actual PC. Works in Workbench, works in every single program. You literally just open up the DCT Amiga and you're on the you're actually browsing the actual PC. Let me show you here. This is so cool. Nice screen here. When we go to open up a file, it just absolutely sees my computer on the network, DCT1 Amiga. And I can go in here and I can load in any picture, any file that I want to, no problem at all, right over the network. It's blazingly fast, worth every penny. Now with this networking, there's a couple of limitations. First of all, it doesn't really work with Roadshow because Roadshow needs kind of a network driver to bind to. So that means features like ping and telnet and things like that that come with Roadshow aren't going to work. But, you know, it's a minor limitation. Most everything else works just fine. I should also be able to get network printing working using the NetPrint protocol. Amiga OS 3.2 supports changing your device just fine. I would literally choose my NetPrint protocol and would be set up to work on my networked laser printer, and I should be able to print just beautifully. Don't have it set up yet, but I'll do that in a couple of weeks. Fantastic, really. You can create documents in Final Writer, save them as rich text format, save them right to your PC, open them up in Word or whatever program you use, print them right out. It's really kind of cool. And of course, from an installation like this, you can hit F12 anytime you want to, tell it to insert a disk, and literally just load a floppy up right off of here. So here's Amiga OS 1.0 floppy. I'll go ahead and tell it to link that up here. It did not like Workbench 1.0 for some reason. I wonder why. That's good though. We got a nice little guru there. That's nice. Speaking of floppies, you may have noticed when I was clicking through some of the features, it says use a real drawbridge or grease weasel floppy right with your setup. And you're literally supposed to be able to plug a grease weasel in. I've done a review on the grease weasel before. It's an interface, a USB interface that allows you to hook up a PC floppy drive and read it and write it just like an Amiga floppy drive. That's one of its features. I have an absolutely beautiful grease weasel right here in this custom case with a floppy drive. Works great on my PC. I use it all the time. Absolutely not recognized on my A600GS. I've tried it a dozen times. Gets no power, never sees the drive. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. But in theory, you can use a real floppy drive. Just doesn't work for me. So all the programs I've thrown at it so far work perfectly fine. I had an issue with Reshoot R and a couple other games that probably hit the direct hardware, but apps and programs, they work absolutely fantastic. I could easily use this as my daily driver machine now that they've added so many new features to it. I'm pretty happy. But is everything peaches and cream? Is this the absolute perfect product that could not be fixed or improved any way at all? No. What needs to be addressed is maneuvering around the interface here. When you see me using the mouse here, when you go over to the right-hand side and try to choose something, this is me actually trying to choose anything on here. And the minute your mouse kind of gets out of where it's supposed to be, everything turns off and shuts down, makes you want to scream. When you go to the right, just keep that locked open. Just keep it locked open so I don't have to, stray by a pixel and have it deactivate on me, okay? If you own one of these, you know exactly what I mean. So this leads me to one of my biggest complaints. Okay, got the joypad in my hand, the control pad, whatever you call it, and I'm trying to select things over on the left-hand side here. The highlight color is yellow on the actual menu, okay? So it's normally white. When it's highlighted, it's yellow. And it is almost impossible to find. I literally have to find myself going, oh yeah, I'm on this one, because you'll be on completely the wrong thing because your eye looks at it, you can't see it. For the love of all that is holy, change the highlight color to bright red, bright green, bright orange, some color that the human eye can actually differentiate, because it drives me nuts after 5 months of using this, not having any idea what I have highlighted. I just literally, I'm looking at it right now, you can barely see it. That's just me though. But if those are the only things I can currently really complain about, that's not too bad. Fix the interface, fix the colors, make it so things aren't jumping all around when you're going to choose your different options. It would be just delightful. Just keep up with the firmware updates. Give us more features, more control features over our operating system installations. Maybe let us choose between NTSC and PAL for the operating system. Maybe give us a little audio control. Maybe give us a little bit more, the ability to create HDF files right from within A600GS. That would be kind of cool. Other than that, The product's been receiving updates and patches every few weeks, which is fantastic. He's releasing them all the time. 90% of the glaring problems I saw in October, totally gone. Everything's working fantastic. It's a nice, solid little device. Now, is the Vampire V4 standalone superior to this? It's hard to say. The performance is fairly close. The Vampire is probably a little bit faster, but the performance is pretty close. And this has the capability of me to add whatever operating system I want, whenever I want, however I want, and run it anytime I want to without even thinking about it. Turn it on. Hey, look, let's play in Workbench 1.3. Oh, let's play in Workbench 3.22. I can have them all just right there at blazingly fast speeds. Now, yeah, the Vampire has something like that. What is it? The enhanced audio, 16-bit audio. But I would wager there's a way to write an AHI driver that addresses the built-in, albeit crappy audio on the Orange Pi and access 16-bit audio from there. Someone's just got to write the driver for it. Please, please don't just write it for AmiBench and ARM processing. Write it for real 68K stuff so the rest of us can use it, please. So is this worth the $150 investment? It's $150 for this thing, American. Absolutely, absolutely yes. Now you're going to need a USB mouse and keyboard. You're going to need a flash drive for it. Most of us either already own those, or you pick up a cheap $40 wireless keyboard and mouse combo. Works absolutely fantastic. You need a decent 9-pin joystick. Most of us have 27 of those sitting in our in our offices. And if not, the gamepad works fine. You're going to have a fast, reliable Amiga system that you can just toss games on and hook it up to your TV and play games. Or if you want to get more serious, you can get into actual Amiga OS, install programs, run anything you want to run, and it's going to run it really, really well for the most part. The crew at AmigaKit, they're awesome. They're very responsive and wonderful people. And I've recommended a couple of different fixes for stuff, things that bug the heck out of me, and they've gone and implemented them in the next firmware update. Just get in touch with them. They're good people. Big thanks to all of my wonderful patrons who you can see scrolling over this game of Xevious I've got going on here on my A600GS. This is a great implementation. If you'd like to join in the fun and maybe help feed a poor orphan who spends all of his money on Commodore and Amiga stuff and doesn't have money for food, pop on over to patreon.com/10mark, and for as little as $2 a month, you can help a brother out. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining me today, and order an A600GS. These things are fantastic. Really, they truly are. Please like and subscribe. Tell me what you use your A600GS for. Tell me why you hate them and you don't ever want to touch one. Just talk to me. I'd love to hear you in the comments. Please follow me on all of the social medias. The links are in the description. This week we should be passing 8,000 subscribers just this week. And at this rate, I'll be up to 1 million subscribers in about 450 years. And that is exciting. But until next time, this is Doug from 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast, signing out.